The Lernaean Hydra lived in Lake Lerna in the region of Argolid and was the offspring of the mother and father of all monsters, Echidna and Typhon, so the sibling of Cerberus. It was a serpent-like beast with many heads, and it was said that if you cut off one of its heads, two more would grow back in its place. The head in the middle was immortal, and all of them could spit deadly acid. Its blood was deathly poisonous, and its teeth were believed to be able to raise the dead. The monster was specifically raised by the goddess Hera to kill Hercules, who was sent to kill it as his second trial. He had to cover his face to protect himself from the noxious gases that the creature produced, and learned the hard way that severing a head resulted in two more growing from the stump. Finally, he hatched a plan where his cousin Iolaus would immediately burn each stump as soon as the head had been removed, which prevented anything from growing back. Hercules used a special golden sword to kill the immortal head, and the Hydra lay lifeless. He dipped all his arrows in the monster's blood and set off to continue his quest. Number 11. Kukulkan. Kukulkan was a feathered serpent deity that was worshipped by the Maya civilization, along with others in South America, and was of such importance to them that one of the most famous structures from the time was dedicated to him. According to one story from legend, he was a boy who was born as a snake. As he grew up, he turned into a feathered monster and was exiled to a cave where only his sister was allowed to care for him. Eventually, he became so large that his sister could no longer provide what he needed, so he flew away into the sea and caused a massive earthquake. To reassure his sister and to let her know that he's still alive, every year in July he would cause the ground to tremor. He was of particular importance to the people of the Itza state, and the temple at Chichen Itza was built in his honor. Stone carvings of serpents can be found around the stepped pyramid, and on the spring and fall equinoxes, the shadow cast by the sun across the structure gives the illusion of a giant serpent moving down the platforms from the sky to the ground. Number 10. Akek. Akek, also known as Akeku, was a dragon-like beast from ancient Egyptian mythology. Described as having the body of a winged antelope and the head of a bird with 3 serpents on it, it was said to live in isolated regions of Egypt, particularly near the Nile Valley. The dragon was mentioned in a series of hymns as being the creature that lurks in the darkness to consume all that passes it, and images were carved into stelae, which were monumental tablets used by the Egyptians to ward off dangers they faced from animals like serpents or crocodiles. The most famous and grandest one of these is known as the Magical Stela and is kept at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. One of its panels shows a king being pulled along in his chariot by Akek, which is walking over other dangers. Number 9. Mushusu. Marduk, or Marutuk, was one of the most important gods of ancient Mesopotamia and was the patron deity of the city of Babylon. He was associated with the planet Jupiter and, as well as having divine weapons, had an incredibly strong animal companion, a dragon called Mushusu. As a hybrid of multiple creatures, the dragon had hind legs that were the talons of an eagle, the forearms of a lion, a stretched neck and tail, horns on its head, the tongue of a serpent, and a crest. The most famous representation of the creature can be seen on the Ishtar Gate of the city of Babylon, which was built about 2,600 years ago as a grand entrance to the city. In images of it, parts that are colored red are meant to suggest anger, and there's the implication that it was a vengeful beast. But beyond that, its temperament is unknown. Number 8. Vishap. The Vishap is a water dragon that originates from Armenian mythology and is often shown as either simply a snake with wings or combined with body parts from other feared animals. It was said to live on Mount Ararat and was seen as the reason why the peak would erupt, and for the earthquakes that often happened in the area. Vishap would descend from the skies and bring with it storms and whirlwinds, and could even absorb the energy of the sun to cause an eclipse. Because of the immeasurable pain and suffering that Vishap inflicted upon the people of Armenia, it was finally slain by the god of fire Van, who was a lauded dragon hunter. Number 7. Ryujin. Ryujin is one of 8 dragon kings from Japanese mythology who was the lord of the sea and of serpents. He possessed magical jewels which he used to influence the tides from his palace beneath the waves. Rarely making a direct appearance himself, Ryujin used snakes as messengers, and being linked with death and thunder, their presence was seen as a bad omen. It was thought that Ryujin lived in Lake Biwa, which is to the northeast of Kyoto, but he wasn't all bad. He was said to possess great magical powers and medicines, and could use these to help people, such as by granting them a long and healthy life. There are shrines throughout Japan that are dedicated to this dragon king, particularly in regions that were reliant on fishing and rain for their livelihoods. Number 6. Medusa. Undoubtedly the best-known creature from Greek mythology is Medusa, the winged woman with venomous snakes instead of hair. She was one of 3 Gorgons, but unlike her siblings that also included Echidna, Medusa wasn't born a monster. Originally, she was a stunning and beautiful mortal, but because of a love affair she had with Poseidon, she was cursed by Athena and turned into the most hideous monster of all. Looking into her eyes would turn anyone into stone, but with the help of Athena and Hermes, Perseus was able to defeat her. She was decapitated, and from her neck sprang her 2 children from Poseidon, Chrysaor and Pegasus. Her head was taken back home with Perseus, but it was said that on his way a drop of her blood fell to the ground and sprouted snakes, which is why to this day the country of Libya is full of them. Number 5. The Cyclops. While most creatures from Greek mythology were invented to represent a specific meaning or purpose, recent discoveries have suggested that the ancient Greeks truly believed Cyclops to be real. They were one-eyed giants who feature in a number of myths that were probably inspired by the remains of an ancient species of elephant that used to live in Greece and Crete. The skull bones of these creatures have a large central opening where the trunk would have attached, and ancient Greeks mistakenly thought that these were recesses for an eye socket. According to Homer, they were cannibals and lived in Sicily, what was then a far distant land. Number 4. Centaurs. Centaurs were, according to Greek mythology, half-human, half-horse creatures that were the children of Ixion, the king of Lapiths, and Nephele, a cloud that had been made in the form of the goddess Hera. They had the body of a horse and the torso, head, and arms of a man. In the legends, most centaurs were wild and lustful beings, solely concerned with what was best for themselves. Number 3. Drakon Kolkikos. In Greek mythology, Jason and the Argonauts were sent on a quest to retrieve the golden fleece from King Aedes of Colchis. On arrival, he was given 3 tasks, the third of which was to defeat the sleepless dragon that guarded the fleece itself. This dragon, called Drakon Kolkikos, was a formidable enemy and had teeth that were harvested by the locals for their magical properties. When they were sewn into the ground, for example, they would grow into an army of warriors known as Spartoi. Luckily for Jason, he was able to confuse them and managed to get them to turn on each other, clearing the way to defeat the dragon. To do this, he sprayed it with a potion that had been given to him by Medea, and it fell asleep, allowing him to sneak past and retrieve the fleece from the tree where it hung. Number 2. The Minotaur. The Minotaur is one of the most famous creatures from Greek mythology, having the body of a man but the head and tail of a bull. It was the offspring of Queen Pasiphae of Crete and a bull, and was truly monstrous. King Minos wanted to keep the Minotaur hidden, mainly because its sheer existence was a punishment handed out to him by the gods. So he ordered his most trusted craftsman Daedalus and his son Icarus to build a large labyrinth to keep it in. Every year, offerings of young men and women were sent into the maze for the Minotaur to feed on. Following a battle between Crete and Athens, which resulted in King Minos' only human son being killed, the city-state was forced to provide 14 tributes every year for the Minotaur. On the 3rd time this happened, the son of Athens' king, Theseus, volunteered to go in order to slay the beast once and for all, and was able to do so with the help of King Minos' daughter, who had fallen in love with him and gave him a ball of thread to find his way home. Number 1. Cerberus. Cerberus was the personification of everything the Greeks feared in wild dogs, and was the creature responsible for guarding the gates of the underworld. It had 3 heads, although earlier accounts said it had as many as 100 heads, and would prevent the dead from escaping back into the real world, as well as stopping living people from making their way across the river Styx into the underworld without the permission of Hades. Often described as having a snake for a tail and other snakes protruding from its body, Cerberus was the offspring of 2 other monsters, Echidna and Typhon.